welcome back to the podcast. Welcome to episode number 6. It's a wonderful day to be recording a podcast because today we are talking about the internal message for each of the types. And specifically, we're going to focus on those of you or those of us that don't know what our Enneagram type is. If you do know what your Enneagram type is, stick around because we're still going to be giving out, I think, some very good information for each of the 9 types. But if you don't know, this one especially might be helpful for you. Here at Aim and Anchor, we believe that the Enneagram is the best tool to help you understand that the storyline in which you are living is false. The Enneagram gives us tools to help us understand our relationship with shame, anger, and fear, and then helps us live into a true narrative in which we live the life that we know we can. Again, like last week, we are kind of doing a little micro coaching session in that I'm pulling one piece from one of the guide sheets that I have. And if you do decide to do coaching with me, we've got 5 sessions that I take you through a myriad of different things. And this is one of the questions that we go through. And again, it's called the internal message. And I just want to go through what the internal message is for each of the 9 types, and then a question that kind of combats that. Let's not waste any more time and jump right in. If you don't know your type, just listen and see if any of these ring true, okay? The basis that we're kind of going off of here is internal message for each of the types, and then we would read this. Each of us has an internal record player that says many things, and one message that you often receive is, all right? So there's your thing. Each of us has an internal record player that says many things. One message you receive often is. Then I'm going to read 9 different statements and then ask some questions that kind of combat those. I want them to be broad because they help us understand the things that we tell ourselves inside in the internal message really don't make sense when we say them out loud. And I laugh at that just because in a lot of my coaching sessions, when I ask the client to say these things that we say to ourselves each day out loud, it's like no one would ever say this to another human, right? It's just not nice. We don't treat ourselves well a lot of the time. So that being said, I'm going to read this first internal message, and I want to know if it sits well with you. This might be helpful to help you find your type if you don't know it yet. Here we go. Our first line here is, if I do everything perfect and right, then I am good and okay. My first question I would have for you is, how will you know what is perfect and right every time? Again, these questions are designed to be broad and general because the answer is fairly obvious, right? So if the question is, how will you always know what is right and perfect? The answer is, obviously you won't always know what is right and perfect. This allows you to kind of take a breath, kind of step back and view the internal message from a farther distance. If I do everything perfect and right, then I am good and okay. As you can see, or hear, I guess, this internal message is kind of in direct opposition to what the actual true story or narrative is that you can live in. So if you choose to not believe, if you choose to believe the opposite, if I do everything perfect and right, then I am good and okay, instead of just being in a place where it says, I am good and okay, whether or not I am doing things perfect and right. Does that make sense? So, again, the question, how will you always know what is right and perfect? And obviously, in a coaching session, we would go through several more questions, and we would talk through a lot more about, do you believe this to be true, or how do you see this show up in your life? All right? So if you don't know your type, listen to that one, and maybe that sits well with you. If that doesn't sit well with you, or it doesn't find you, let's listen to this one. Again, this is, each of us has an internal record player that says many things, and one message that you often receive, this person often receives, is, if I am close to others and loved by them, then I am okay. Do you believe that to be true? And no, these aren't like statements that are probably things that you consciously say to yourself. So you might need to spend some more time with these, okay? So again, I'll just read that one more time. If I am close to others and loved by them, then I am okay. So the question I would have for you today is, does your value and worth really depend on people loving and appreciating you? Ask yourself honestly, all jokes aside, does your value and worth really depend on people loving and appreciating you? So sit with the question, if I am close to others and loved by them, then I am okay. Is that a true statement? And then ask a contrary question. Does your value and worth really depend on people loving and appreciating you? All right, so our next one would be this message here. If I do something valuable or admirable, then I am okay. One more time. If I do something valuable or admirable, then I am okay. So my question for you would be, where does your value really come from? Is it from doing these admirable, valuable things? Who's attaching value to that? You? Where does your value really come from? One way to know if this message is true for you is if it kind of makes you uncomfortable. If you feel like you want to skip past it pretty quick, I'm not saying that it's the answer, but I'm saying just pay attention to what's happening for you. If you're hearing something, if you're hearing one of these lines and you're going, well, that can't be me, or you are uncomfortable with the statement itself, maybe it's time, maybe that's your clue to say, hey, you know what? I might need to sit with this for a bit. Come at this whole exercise with a sense of wonder. Like you are learning more about you. And that's not bad. That is very good. Okay? And just because you're learning something that makes you uncomfortable doesn't make you bad. It just means you're learning. And learning means you're growing. And growing is uncomfortable. And that's good. All right, here's another internal message. If I am authentic and true to myself, then I am okay. Do you believe that about yourself? The opposing question I have is, what does it mean to be authentic and true to yourself? How do you know when you've arrived? How do you know when you're truly the most authentic version of you? And what does that mean? Our next one goes like this. If I master a body of knowledge, then I am okay. So the question that kind of helps you recognize that this is false, right? This is the other side of the story. How will you know when you have fully mastered a particular body of knowledge? Isn't there always more to learn? Of course there is. Of course there is. So again, we're reading this perceived internal message that is not a true story, that we tell ourselves subconsciously all the time, constantly. And then a message that helps us understand that this is a false message, okay? So I'm going to read this one more time just because I really like this one. If I master a body of knowledge, then I am okay. That's the false internal message. And then a question to help you recognize that it is false. How will you know when you have fully mastered a particular body of knowledge? Isn't there always more to learn? Our next perceived internal message sounds like this. If I am completely prepared, I have all of the bases covered, and done all that is expected of me, then I am okay. Is this one true for you? So the question to help you recognize that this message is false. Does your worrying and doing what is expected of you really work in making you feel more secure? Now, you could change out a word here. Instead of saying secure, you could say safe. Does your worrying and doing what's expected of you really work in making you feel safe? Again, in a coaching session with me, we would be on Zoom like this. I'd have more questions for you, but we'd kind of take this time to dive into what you believe to be the true story. And then we'll ask some questions, go back and forth to figure out, like, that is not true. This is not true for someone that believes this message, right? If you believe if I am completely prepared and cover all my bases and done what is expected of me, then I'm okay. Then I'm safe. Then I'm secure. The opposite of that, does your worrying and doing what's expected of you really work in making you feel more secure? All right, we've got a few more here. This next one. When I get what my heart wants and desires, then I am okay. If I get what my heart wants and desires, then I am okay. The question to help you recognize that this message is false. How do you distinguish a need from a want? And little bonus, is that hard for you to do? If you are someone that has a tough time distinguishing between a want and a need, if it's hard for you to do, and you go, when I get what my heart wants and desires, then I'm okay. This might be your type here. It might be. It might not be. Again, Sit with it. And especially if you gravitate towards this internal message, it might be even a little bit more difficult for you to sit with this and be comfortable with it. So take your time. Be gracious with yourself. Our next perceived internal message is, as long as I am in control and remain tough, then I am okay. As long as I am in control and remain tough, then I am okay. Do you believe this to be true about you? Do you believe that this is the storyline in which you live? If so, the question I would have for you to combat or to help you understand that that message is false goes like this. How will you know when you are tough and in control enough to ensure your protection? How will you know when you are tough and in control enough to ensure your protection? Again, these questions are designed to be broad. They're designed to kind of have an answer that says, well, of course, right? Like, of course, I won't ever know. I don't know that I'll ever have enough control. But you can see the cycle almost start there, right? If I'm not in control enough, then I need to get into more control. And if there's never really an end to that, I need more control and more control and more. There won't ever be enough. So maybe it's time to let go of that old story and invite a new one in. Our last internal message sounds like this. And again, these are coming from the guide sheets, the actual guide sheets that I take you through when you do coaching with me. This is the perceived internal message. And again, each of us has an internal record player that says many things. And this person that hears this message sounds like this. If everyone around me is good and okay, then I am good and okay. As long as everyone else has what they need, as long as they're good, I'm good. So the question to help you recognize that this message is false, this storyline is not true. How can you measure and know that everyone around you is really okay? Like, how is it possible? It's just not, right? It's just not. I'm going to go back through one more time, and we're going to talk I'm just going to tell you what each of the types are. So starting from the bottom, the internal message for the type 9 is this one here. If everyone around me is good and okay, then I am good and okay. And maybe this will help you maybe dive in a little bit more to learning about your Enneagram type. And obviously, as always, you can email me with your questions. You can DM me on Instagram or TikTok or whatever. And if you want to go even further into finding out what your type is before you get into actual coaching, I have a free assessment on my website, top right corner. It says free assessment. If you want to kind of like solidify what you're thinking, what you're feeling about your type, head on over to eamonacrecoaching.com. You can take the test there. It's free. It takes 8 minutes, I think, maybe 10 minutes. So the type 8 internal message is, as long as I am in control and remain tough, then I am okay. So if that message rang true for you, maybe look into what the type 8 is. If you gravitated towards this internal message, when I get what my heart wants and desires, then I am okay, then maybe you need to investigate the type 7 on the Enneagram. If this storyline made sense to you, if I am completely prepared, have all the bases covered, and done all that is expected of me, then I am okay, maybe start to investigate what the type 6 looks like. If you gravitated towards this internal message, if I master a body of knowledge, then I am okay, check out type 5s, all right? Read up on those guys. If this one rang true for you, if I am authentic and true to myself, then I am okay, start to investigate the type 4 on the Enneagram. If this internal message made sense to you, check out type 3. If I do something valuable or admirable, then I am okay. If that one was true for you, again, check out type 3, read up on type 3. If I am close to others and loved by them, then I am okay. That internal message right there, that's attached to type 2 on the Enneagram. So if that one rang true for you, read up on type 2s. And then our last one here, the internal message of type 1s is, if I do everything perfect and right, then I am good and okay. If you heard that and was like, man, I totally know what that is like, maybe start to investigate, read up on type 1s on the Enneagram. If you are wondering where to read up on, I have a weekly email that goes out on Sundays along with this podcast that gives you tips on different things about the Enneagram and different types. You can also check out the blog on my website, eamonacrecoaching.com. Obviously, there's lots of good resources in all kinds of places. So if you have any questions on anything, please email me, brandon@aimandanchorcoaching.com. That's it for the podcast this week. All I want you to remember as you're heading out the door is you are not what happened to you. You are what you choose to become. So, what story do you want to live this week? Bye, guys.